majority in both houses of Congress. After the results, Fernandez said she will take up her seat on December 10th with the aim of fighting the government's economic policies. And she called on the other opposition forces to come together to protest against the neoliberal adjustments.
Our society, the Argentinian people, have chosen the type of opposition they want. And we can forget to say that we never criticized or undermined other oppositional political forces. Because we believe in the need for unity between those opposition coalitions that believe the current political and social model of structural adjustment can only cause pain to the immense majority of the people.
Solamente puede causar dolor a la inmensa mayoría del pueblo.
For his part, Argentinian President Mauricio Macri promised to listen to all Argentinians.
Cuando hablo de todos,
when I refer to everyone, I'm not talking only about our voters today, but also to those who voted for other candidates. I would like to say that we're willing to listen to you, that we respect your ideas and our differences. There will always be an open door for your proposals, because that's what democracy is. And we don't have any other agenda than working for all Argentinians to live better, for all of us to live better.
So let's have a look at the results across Argentina. President Macri's Cambiemos coalition, shown in yellow here on the map, made gains across the country. For the Senate, it got 41% of the vote, compared with 36.5% for the Front for Victory, led by Cristina Fernandez. In the lower house, the gap was slightly wider, 41.1 to 30.7%. The left front did a bit better here with 5.9%. In terms of seats, in the Senate, this means the Front for Victory has 9, including Cristina Fernandez herself, and Macri's Cambiemos has 12. In the lower house, the split is 42 to 61 seats. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has been following the results as they came in.
Here from Argentina, it's the day after the midterm legislative elections, which have given us a lot of material for analysis and also fixed the policies that will continue to be implemented by Mauricio Macri's government. According to what just happened a couple of hours ago, the elections ended and the numbers came out. The results, although favorable for President Macri, show that he's not going to have a majority in the lower house nor in the upper house. So, the government's legislation will continue to be subject to a dynamic of negotiation, but we also have a picture of how those economic policies could be implemented. At 6 a.m., an increase in the price of fuel was implemented by 10 to 12%, which means that public transport, food and taxes will all go up, and this is something that was already anticipated, that if Mauricio Macri's government got good results in the legislative elections, he will extend his economic and labor reforms. The truth is that Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner is consolidating her position as the leader of the opposition. She will take her seat in the Senate on December 10th. This process began in June, and in only 4 months, she has achieved over 3 million votes in Buenos Aires, 3,400,000 votes. And looking to the future, as we say in Argentina, here nothing is over, here everything is beginning. Because as we have been saying for days, what those numbers represent in Buenos Aires province is a level of popular support that marks a trend towards the next presidential elections.
Edgardo Esteban with that report. Catalan leaders say they will not cooperate with the Spanish government's decision to take over the region's autonomous powers. The Catalan Regional Parliament will meet on Thursday to decide on its response to Madrid after Article 155 was triggered. On Saturday, Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy invoked Article 155 in order to sack the regional government of Catalonia and impose direct rule. The move was labeled a, quote, de facto coup d'etat by the Speaker of the Catalan Parliament. A vote in the Spanish Senate will take place on Friday to determine when direct rule will be implemented.
La llei, a través de jutges i fiscals, They impose the law through judges and prosecutors. They impose the law through police. We have been occupied for weeks. They want to scare us with police, physically and legally, accusing us of sedition and revolution offenses. They're also stealing the functions of a parliament and a government that were chosen in a democratic way.
Half a million people protested in favor of Catalan independence on Saturday, and more protests are expected this week. Our correspondent Joan Ortiz has more.
Greetings from Barcelona. There's a lot of uncertainty among the independence bloc regarding what they will do throughout this week, even knowing that towards the end of this week there will be this session at the Catalan Parliament. And what I mean by this is that there are doubts about how independence will be declared, which is raising questions. Whether this could be a unilateral proclamation with all of its consequences, and whether this might come sooner in resistance to the attacks from the Spanish government, or if it will be a symbolic declaration of independence. There is also speculation about a call for elections to have a sort of pause in the current crisis. Also, given the reactions to the situation, there's an idea to create a unity government to defend the integrity of the Catalan institutions. Other doubts include whether President Carles Puigdemont will appear in the Parliament next Thursday afternoon to present his allegations against the application of Article 155. Two things will take place in parallel. From Madrid, the mixed commission in charge of supervising the measures included in this application of Article 155 has already been set up. And as we said, this commission is responsible of supervising every one of the steps to finalize the document for the application of Article 155 to be voted on Friday. All of this will take place in Madrid. Meanwhile, in the Senate, here in Barcelona, a session will be called for Thursday, a session in which the consequences and effects of Article 155 in Catalonia will be debated, and all seems to indicate that there could be a declaration of independence then as well. But it is yet to be seen if this will be voted on, or if it will be proclaimed by the Generalitat President, Carles Puigdemont, as the Article number 4 of the referendum law allows for. Meaning that this could be done without a vote. That's what's going on and what's expected for this week. The independence bloc wants to declare independence before the application of Article 155, but way before, meaning they don't want to postpone it in order to avoid any changes of the applicability of the Article 155 from the Spanish government. And they don't want to do it after. As we said, because they would want Catalonia to be declared an independent republic before this article takes effect. Mobilizations are also expected to defend on the streets whatever is declared in Parliament, and these are expected to happen continuously. There will be a student strike on Thursday and on Sunday, a demonstration from the Catalan civil society. The Unionist coalition, which wants the application of Article 155, could lead to a big conflict. So a lot of activity on the streets that could become complicated.
Joanna Ortiz in Barcelona. 1 month after the passage of Hurricane Maria, Dominica is still struggling to recover. Among the multiple facilities that suffered damage was an important oil storage and distribution plant of Wati Kabuli, which works under the Petrocaribe agreement with 55% Venezuelan ownership and 45% Dominican. The facility was fully refurbished over the weekend thanks to programs developed by Petrocaribe. Over 7,000 gas tanks were distributed every month to citizens in Dominica. One customer explains the positive impact the program has had in her community.
We need it right now after Maria. There's a lot of places that are closed down and we don't have the access to gas with our food. And this is the one that is so helpful to us right now. We are so happy for Petrocaribe that they are in Dominica and they can support our homes to help us with our children, our neighbors, our friends, our family, and to even give us the gas at a certain rate that is so important to us.
In his latest press briefing, Dominican Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit revealed that 12 government schools were open today and that he will be flying to Brussels on Tuesday to meet with the European Union to discuss securing additional relief funding for Dominica. He also asked his citizens to help each other more.
My final point is to say to the citizens that we need to help each other more, and we need to help ourselves more. You know, I was saying to somebody over the weekend who complained to me that one family received supplies only once so far. And I asked, but do you have supplies at your home? Yes. I said, but why couldn't you in the interim provide your neighbor with some supplies? You know, and the next time the people come around to deliver the supplies, you could draw to your attention that, look, they have skipped your neighbor. So I think we have to have a more brotherly and sisterly love demonstrated.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Social organizations, farmers and unions in Colombia are starting an indefinite national strike, demanding the government fully implement the peace accords signed with the FARC last November. Those taking part include the Patriotic March, the National Coordination of Coca, Poppy and Marijuana Growers, as well as the organizations of indigenous and Afro-Colombian peoples, all of whom are demanding an immediate stop to the attacks and killings of activists in rural areas.
The real background of these attacks are the economic interests in those regions. Very powerful people associated with drug trafficking and legal and illegal mining to mega projects with criminal organizations at their head. Narco-paramilitary groups and different actors, but the reality is there's a territorial struggle for resources, income and local power.
This week there's going to be a meeting of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, and we want to express our demand to call on them for denouncing the killings in Colombia, which in just this year total 83. And in the last 20 months, since the signing of the peace deal, there have been more than 220 murders of social leaders in the country.
In the latest assassination, armed men have murdered Miguel Perez in the department of Antioquia. He was a campesino leader and member of the leftist Patriotic March Party, who had been promoting the substitution of illicit crops in the area. The Patriotic March says 125 social leaders and human rights defenders have been killed so far in 2017. Our correspondent, Milton Henao, has the latest from Bogota.
We're here in Colombia, where today a national strike has begun, led by indigenous, campesinos, and Afro communities from all around the country. They're demanding mainly three things: the implementation of agreements, more than 3,000 agreements between the government and these communities, because so far they haven't got solutions to their social problems. On the other hand, the full implementation of the peace accords signed in La Habana. A third, guarantees the safety for the social leaders that are being murdered in recent days in Colombia. We know that right now, the main marches are taking place in Cauca department, and gradually more sectors will join this strike. Campesinos, Afros, and indigenous are taken to the streets and demanding that the Santos government fulfills the accords.
Milton Henao in Colombia. A fourth round of peace talks between the Colombian government and the ELN guerrilla group gets underway this week in Ecuador. On Sunday, ELN representatives met with a delegation from the former guerrilla group, the FARC, now known as the Alternative Revolutionary Force of the Commons, in Manta on Ecuador's coast. The meeting between the two groups to discuss ceasefire arrangements was given the green light by the Colombian president, Juan Manuel Santos. Two Nobel Peace Prize winners, Shirin Ebadi from Iran and Tawakkol Karma from Yemen, have strongly denounced the Honduran government's inaction in response to the murder of environmentalist Berta Cáceres in 2011. During their tour of the country, they met with the indigenous Lenca people, of which Berta Cáceres was a leader. The activists had led mobilizations against the construction of a hydroelectric dam near the Gualcarde River and was gunned down in her home in 2016. Violence is not new in the Honduran countryside. 20 years after the death of activist Carlos Escaleras, the Honduran government has asked for forgiveness. Leaders and activists took the opportunity to demand justice for the over 100 environmental activists murdered in the last 10 years.
At a public event in the Honduran state of Colón, authorities representing the government officially recognized the murder of the former environmental activist Carlos Escaleras as committed by the state. The declaration was part of an agreement with the International Human Rights Commission, the victim's family, and the state.
The state accepts the international responsibility for the violation of the guarantee to the right of life and the integrity of our fellow citizen, Carlos Escaleras.
The family of the victim accepted the position of the state, but they also demand justice for other activists murdered in Honduras.
To forget would mean that we would abandon the cause. If we forget, we will forget Carlos, and we will deny justice for Janet Caguas, Carlos Luna, and Berta Cáceres.
Furthermore, human rights organizations link the current situation of the campesino groups to the sellout policies of the campesino territories by the government.
Today, the state asked for forgiveness for the assassination of Carlos Escaleras 20 years ago. But today, the same problems that he fought for still exist. The land grabbing is still happening today at the Bajo Caguán.
The campesinos who Carlos Escaleras defended pointed their fingers at the state for continuing to deny campesinos the right of owning their own land and for the lack of environmental protection.
The land struggle will not stop because the farmers who live in the Caguán Valley don't have the opportunity to have their own piece of land to work.
The Honduran authorities compromised in order to give reparations to the family of Carlos Escaleras and more protection due to the threats that they have suffered.
Venezuela's National Electoral Council says that it has received no complaints from opposition parties about the conduct of the regional elections on October 15th. The governors elected from opposition parties have not decided if they will take their oath before the Constituent Assembly.
I encourage the political organizations, mainly the opposition political organizations, who said that there was fraud, to appeal the process. The legislation mentions that any political organization who isn't happy with the results can appeal to the National Electoral Council. If you have any doubts of the process and you do not agree with it, you should appeal the process until today. Monday, nobody has appealed.
Hasta hoy lunes, nadie en lo absoluto ha impugnado.
An investigation into Pablo Neruda's probable cause of death has found that Chile's most famous poet did not die of prostate cancer. According to a panel of forensic experts, they are certain Neruda had not been killed by the disease. They will now carry out tests on a toxin found in his remains. The Nobel laureate died in 1973. He was suffering from prostate cancer, but it was not life-threatening, leading the experts to conclude a third party could have possibly been involved. With more on this story, our correspondent Francisca Castillo.
Now it is not the writings of Pablo Neruda that speak to the world, but his body. With these heartfelt words, Adolf Reyes, the poet's nephew, ended the news conference given by the panel of experts. And he said very clearly that the recent months of investigations showed that the poet's death certificate is wrong, because the death certificate says he died from a cachexia, that is, a multiple organ failure caused by the cancer he had, which was at a level 4. However, investigation of the documentation and Pablo Neruda's body indicate that his condition was not that bad, not enough to cause such a rapid death. We recall that this happened 12 days after the coup by August Pinochet. The panel of experts said that they had found a new bacteria in Neruda's remains, which should be carefully investigated with more studies to identify the genome and understand where it came from. In other words, to see if the bacteria was foreign to Neruda's body and was inoculated into him, or if it was already in his body. This investigation could take between 6 months and 1 year, and then we will be able to know what exactly caused the death of the poet Pablo Neruda.
That report from Francisca Castillo. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. The defeat of the Islamic State group in Syria and Iraq has been making headlines around the world. However, another one of their defeats overseas has seen less coverage. On the island of Mindanao in the Philippines, the group has been defeated by the city of Marawi by government forces. President Rodrigo Duterte has heralded his victory, but at what human cost has this 5-month-long battle been won?
The battle against the Islamic State in Marawi has been won. The longest-running urban war in the Philippines' modern history. After 5 months of fighting, soldiers, government representatives, their wives and the press all gathered to watch the national flag go up in an official liberation ceremony. The only group missing from this jubilant crowd are the civilians. You have to drive through the skeletal remains of the city to reach the real victims of this urban war. Tucked away in the surrounding countryside, makeshift tents sit row by row. These temporary homes are what's sheltering some of the thousands of evacuees who have been displaced by the fighting. Some figures estimate 600,000 of the city's inhabitants have been displaced. In response to the displacement, the government have begun building temporary homes. Due to the high number of displaced, homes are being allocated in raffles.
I hope I can be included in the raffle and be able to stay there for my children's well-being. Many people here prioritize their children, since many of the kids cannot stand living in the tents.
President Rodrigo Duterte has heralded the victory. His hardline tactic seems to have paid off, for some. For others, the cost of this war has a harsher reality. Duterte had declared martial law on the island of Mindanao as a result of the fighting. The last time martial law was declared was by late Philippine dictator Ferdinand Marcos, a leader who ruled from 1965 to 1986 and was known for his less than clean human rights record. Duterte, who took power in June of last year, has since provoked international outcry over human rights abuses in his war on drugs. As the rebuilding of Marawi begins, some of its residents wonder whether democracy will also be restored, or whether the city's scars mark a new dark era for the Philippines.
Now let's take a look at the news making headlines around the world.
The United Nations has appealed for over $430 million to provide life-saving aid for 6 months to 1.2 million Rohingya refugees who fled violence in Myanmar. Most of these Rohingya refugees are now in Bangladesh. The World Food Programme is particularly concerned about malnourished women and children who reach the border after days on the move.
We have to be ready for the strong possibility that there will continue to be a need in humanitarian assistance for a period beyond the end of February, which is what we have got as the outer limit currently of the appeal. Obviously, we don't know exactly the situation that we'll be facing then, but it's realistic to expect that we will be facing a continuing problem to deal with in Bangladesh.
Thousands of people rallied on Sunday to demand justice for the murdered Maltese journalist and anti-corruption blogger Daphne Caruana Galizia. A list of demands, including that the police commissioner and public prosecutor resign, was delivered to the president. The 53-year-old was killed in a car bombing on the 16th. She had been investigating corruption among senior politicians linked to the Panama Papers.
Basically, Maltese society came out in full force this afternoon to make their demands to the President, the Prime Minister and to the institutions of Malta. And they made it clear that Malta and Malta society is not going to rest until justice is served for the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia.
Mayors from around the world are meeting in Paris for the C40 conference on climate change. 12 major cities, including London, Paris and Cape Town, have promised to buy only zero-emission buses from 2025 and to make large areas free from fossil fuel emissions by 2030. Many cities are setting tougher environmental goals than governments to limit air pollution and to achieve the goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement to curb greenhouse gas emissions. At least 13 people were killed by 3 female suicide bombers in Maiduguri, Nigeria on Sunday night. According to a police official, it was the deadliest attack in over a month as the conflict with Boko Haram stretches into its 9th year. The conflict is showing little sign of slowing, despite assurances by the government and military that Boko Haram is on the verge of defeat. Conjoined twins born in Gaza on Sunday need to leave the blockaded Palestinian enclave for treatment crucial to their survival. This according to their doctor and a family member. The twins are conjoined at the abdomen and pelvis, and according to the head of the neonatal unit at Gaza's Shifa hospital, their complicated condition cannot be dealt with in the Gaza Strip.
We've come to the end of this midday news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
The evidence is well